Hey guys, what's up? I got a few things I wanted to say today. So let's get started. First, I want to talk to you guys about the Supreme Court, and I'm going to come back to that. But first, I got to cover a few things real quick. And there's some background noise here. I'm aware of it. Because there's a motorbike downstairs and all this, but I'm not worried about that. It'll pass in just a second. Okay. First of all, I want everybody to understand because I know a lot of people don't know history. They just think America just showed up and America just became this great country, and it's always been America. First of all, history don't work like that. Okay, all right. America was not a country. It was just a piece of land that was there, and Native Americans were living on it. That's that's what it was. Okay, and then the British people came there and started colonies. The British people came there and started colonies. And as they were developing the land, you would think they started, they started the whole thing. No, they didn't. It was already there for millions of years. The land was there, the people were there. And there was more people than what they're telling you. It was thousands of tribes there. Okay, fast forward past all of that. I want you to understand this because it's important. They don't teach you this in school. Okay, these were British people. Now, before they created the country, they decided to bring enslaved people to the place. Enslaved people were there that they brought there to do work for them before they started the country. Before they started the country, they were still under British control. They were a British colony, a British colony. England, London, all that. British. Okay, so, I mean, English. I mean, England. Okay, British. So, what happens? So, what happens? Okay, here's another idea. Black people were already there before the British got there. That's a whole different story. I'm not going to get into it. Black people were there in this place that wasn't a country. They were free black people. They were there already in the continent. They were everywhere. So you can't say they weren't there. They were everywhere. Why? Because they were the first people. So they went everywhere and they were there also. They were there with the Native Americans. Black people were. Okay. Then the British people that were there, okay, you could say the British people were immigrants. You could say they were immigrants. Okay, we don't look at it the same way they did then, but they were immigrants. They came in there and they took over the place, and they brought enslaved people to work. But they brought the enslaved people before they created the country. They created the country in 1776. The slaves were there. The enslaved people were there in 1619. All well documented. All well documented. Okay, so I want you to understand that. How did they create the country? Well, you've heard the story of the Tea Party and the taxes and all of that bullshit, which it's a lie. It's a lie. They created the country because here's what was going on in Britain. Britain decided they didn't want to have slaves anymore. They didn't think it was moral, and they didn't want to have slaves anymore. It had become a problem for Britain to keep slaves all over the place. The slaves were rebelling and fighting back, and the Britons said, "Hey, we're going to do away with this slave thing. We're just going to do away with it." Well, in the Americas, they were getting rich. They were getting rich off cotton, tobacco, sugar cane. They were getting rich. And that's the same money that built the United States. The money that they weren't paying the slaves. That was free labor for what, 250 plus years of free labor. Okay. So I want you to understand something. How did they create the country? How did they create the Constitution? Well, how do you create anything these days? You go to the copy store. You go to the copy store and you rewrite some things. You cut and paste. The Constitution is a cut and paste. A cut and paste. What do I mean? Okay, you take all these people that you call brilliant founders. They're brilliant, excellent, beautiful founders. They were just criminals. They were criminals sent from Britain to take over another country. They were not. They were prisoners and criminals and people that Britain didn't want to deal with. They sent them to America to start another country, another colony. And if they died because the natives decided to kill them, Britain wouldn't care. Okay, if they died, if they got killed by the Native Americans, Britain wouldn't give a damn. Why? Because they pulled them out of their prisons, gave them some money, put them on a ship, and sent their ass to America. Okay, so to what was to be America? Well, these guys were getting rich and decided, hey, we want to keep the slaves. Think about that for a second. Hey, we're getting rich. We don't want to pay taxes. And we want to keep the slaves. This is a win-win situation for them. So the colonists decided to rebel against Britain. Then Britain decided, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to let you guys go. We're going to fight you over that. So they sent troops. So after the colonists did their cut and paste job, and okay, so if they cut and paste, where did they get all the ideas from? Britain. Britain. They took all their laws and all of their guidelines and all of their vis-a-vis, right? All of their information. They cut and pasted into a constitution. Now think about this for a second. And the only part they removed is we don't want a king. We want a king. We want to be the sovereign. We want the rich elite will be the sovereign. There will be no king. But they kept everything else from Britain. They were British. So when you say the pilgrims were British people that came from Europe with the funny hats, the black and white hats and all the bullshit. They were from England. They were from Europe. And they created this great country called America, and they did it all by themselves. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. A bunch of criminals did not create America. They didn't. The enslaved people created America, and the enslaved people knew how to create a country. They knew how to create a country. So they brought the enslaved people to help them do all the work. Those white prisoners didn't know how to do no farming, didn't know how to do no building. They enslaved people to do that. Now, what they did is they wrote up the Constitution, erased the king part out of it, and called themselves brilliant. And they fought a war against the British, and they won. And the only reason they won is the British were too stretched out at the time. The British was getting their ass kicked all over the place, in the islands and everywhere else. The British were attacked everywhere. They were spread too thin. They couldn't fucking deal with the Americans. So America say, well, we freed ourselves. We fought the British and we freed ourselves and we won. You remember Paul Revere came? The British are coming. The British are coming. Remember all that bullshit? Most of that never happened. It was a cut and paste job. The Constitution, the whole thing, everything is set up under the British style of doing things. And that is wrong. Because these people never meant to represent black people or colored people or Latin people or Cuban people or Brazilian people. It was never designed to support a diverse nation of people, never. And it's ironic that it does. So when the Supreme Court comes forth and say, hey, the new rule of law is, we're taking it back to the beginning. We're taking it back to the British, what the British thought back in the day, hundreds of years ago. We're going to take it back to that. Well, the British never represented no fucking black people. What are you thinking? They never represent. So why do we keep this Constitution? Why do we keep this British style Constitution? Why do we keep this British style government? Is beyond me. It doesn't represent the people, a vibrant, excellent, diverse group of people. It never was meant to represent us. And the Supreme Court came and made this decision that it took decades to change. It took decades to get that voter stuff going, and they come and just slashed it all up. Now I'm gonna tell you something about that. They say it's not a racist power grab, but that's exactly what it is. They always say it's opposite what it is. It's a power grab, and it's a racist, white nationalist, white supremacy power grab. And that's the Supreme Court of the United States. But it would be the same way in Britain. It was designed that way. It's not broken. It was designed to oppress black and brown people. Do you get me? You understand what I'm saying? Am I speaking Chinese to you guys? I'm telling you, the Constitution and all of this stuff, the Supreme Court and all of this stuff was never designed to help black people. And to keep pretending that shit does, it doesn't. And I don't care if they burn it all down. And that's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is they just opened up a powder keg trying to take people back to the Jim Crow era. And when people realize, see, it takes people time. It takes some time to realize what's really happening. But when people start to realize what's really happening, they're going to ask themselves, am I with this or am I not with this? And there are certain people you don't want to push their buttons. Because some people are going to say, I'm not with this plan. This is not going to work for me. And the ones who say it's not going to work for me, you're going to have some problems on your hands when people stand up and say, this shit doesn't work for me. People are going to start fighting back. And it's going to get beyond the protests, you understand? The protests are wonderful. They're beautiful. All these people out there marching, singing songs, kumbaya, and they got their signs and they doing the thing, and they're marching and they're peaceful and it's beautiful. Yeah, that's wonderful. But you're going to catch hell. You're going to catch hell when people start bringing sticks and stones and guns to these fucking protests. You're going to catch hell. Okay? So you need to understand that this is a very dangerous situation. And it's unfolding. And it started right there in Memphis, and it's going to continue. And I'm watching it because I want to see what's going to happen too.